Welcome back everyone. In this phase, we are going to do scanning. We have covered about our first phase of ethical hacking, that is information gathering. But in this whole section, we are about to scan our target. And scanning is not just a tip of iceberg, as information gathering was a tip of the iceberg of ethical hacking. But in scanning phase, we deep dive into gathering information about our target at a technical perspective to gather more specific information. So what is the difference between information gathering and scanning? You might have raised this question in your mind now. So the basic difference is, when we do information gathering, we gather some basic or general information about our target, like their IP addresses, their email, their phone numbers, and some journal information present about them on the web or any social media sites. But whereas in scanning, it's all about the technical side of our target. We gather as much as information about our target in the technical side, like what technology they are using to host their machine, to host their web pages, what technology, ports or services are running on their system, and how they work. We have to gather all this information in our scanning part of ethical hacking. Now you might be wondering what we are going to actually do in the scanning phase and what are goals related to scanning. We will talk about that later, but the big question arises here that what targets or what websites we are allowed to scan. Because remember, scanning isn't something that you can do it with your free will. Sometimes it can get illegal as well. You don't have to be worried about that, as we are going to use some vulnerable machines, or we can say vulnerable virtual machines, to hack or exploit them. There are many virtual machines that are paid and available for all of us, but for this course we are going to use some free ones that are easily available, that we can easily set up on our virtual box, gather information about them, scan them, exploit them, and eventually gain access to them, in simple words, to hack them. So these virtual machines are something what runs outdated and vulnerable softwares, as you can be able to exploit them according to your hacking practices, and we are going to exploit them in the next section, that is exploitation and gaining access section. Plus, these virtual machines that are vulnerable don't even require much of a hardware, so that you can use your vulnerable virtual machine alongside your Kali Linux. As I have told you earlier in the virtualization section, that you can run multiple virtual machines at a time, and as this vulnerable machine doesn't even use much hardware, so it is simply very easy to use this alongside your Kali Linux virtual machine or your hacking lab. And keep this in mind, the penetration testing process in the real world is just similar to the scenario we are going to face in this course. That means when you are working in any big MNCs after watching this course, maybe like Microsoft, Google, Netflix, or any company, you are working as a security analyst, penetration tester, you will face similar kind of scenarios while exploiting or testing the security of their systems. But the difference is, in this section or in this course, you know that we are going to exploit a vulnerable machine, but in the real world scenario, you wouldn't have that information available to you if that something is vulnerable or not. You have to find it by yourself. But knowing that a particular machine is vulnerable doesn't mean that it will help you. You have to understand what is a particular vulnerability, what is that particular port, what server is running, which version of services on them, and if it is vulnerable or not. So there is a lot of things to cover, and you need to understand a lot of things to know if something is vulnerable or not. So it's not going to help you that if you know that some machine we are going to install is vulnerable, so it is easy to just get into that and hack them. You have to understand the vulnerabilities as well. That is why we will be using our Kali Linux virtual machine to scan that vulnerable machine. So after scanning, we will gather a lot of information about our target system and the vulnerabilities present inside them that will eventually lead us to hacking it. So when we scan, we essentially send packets back and forth to our vulnerable machine, and these packets reveals the information or the vulnerable information about our target. And after we get information about our target, hopefully we will get clues on what ports or what services are vulnerable and how we can exploit them. Now, what exactly are these packets? So packets are like TCP and UDP are just two protocols used to send bits and information to send bits of data, also called packets. We will deep dive into the details of TCP and UDP protocols in the next lecture. Till now, just assume that TCP and UDP are some packets that are used for the communication. But now you must be thinking that what does it mean by gathering information or scanning a target? What we are going to actually achieve through this process? So when we scan, we can find some ports, and these ports are present on the device. It is not any actual physical port like a USB port or any port that is present physically on the hardware side of your device, but it is like a virtual port to host a particular service, to host a particular software service or communicate over the network. For example, when you visit a website, you are connecting to a machine that hosts a particular website, and that website is being hosted on port 80, and port 80 is basically used for HTTP, that is Hypertext Transfer Protocol. And if the website is secure, it must be using 443 port, and that is for HTTPS, that is a secure version of HTTP. So the most common port that you will see open on any target, that is port 80 or port 443, if that target is hosting a particular website or hosting any services on it. But that will only happen if you will target any particular service or particular website externally. For example, if you are sitting at your home network and targeting your university's or maybe school's website, so then port 80 and port 443 will appear. But when you are using the same network that website is being hosted on, suppose you are inside your university and you are performing scans and you are connected to the same Wi-Fi or same network that the server of that website is using, then you might see ports like 21, that is for FTP, File Transfer Protocol. That means you are scanning internally, and this protocol is used for transferring files over a network. Another port you might find open is port 22, which is for secure cell, that is used to remotely log into a machine and execute commands. We are also going to exploit this port in our further lectures and gain access over a vulnerable machine using this port or by exploiting this port. So it is very essential to remember the SSH port. And you might find port 53, that is a DNS port, and port 25 as well, that is used for simple mail transfer protocol, which handles email services. These were the some examples of ports. There are tons of ports on your device, and if I say tons of ports, I literally mean it, because there are 65,535 ports available on your device just for TCP and UDP both. So if just one of these ports are open and running a vulnerable software, that means you can hack through them. And the most secure machines are the ones with no open ports. For example, your PC at your home or your laptop device. When you scan your own laptop, you may come across an output that all ports are filtered. What does that mean? That means your firewall has blocked all the ports, and if you find any port open, either might be you are hosting any website, that's why you find any port open, or maybe your machine is vulnerable. You might have to block that port as well. But websites, for example, they need port 80 or port 443 to host. But companies might have certain ports open on their network. So if you ever have been to your computer lab, you must have known that if you create any program file and suppose you are sitting on the system 1 and you have to transfer that file to the system 22 and you are not allowed to use mail services or any texting services like third-party social media apps. So when you want to do that, you go to the networks and you can simply just transfer that file to the system 22. That means some ports are open, some file transferring protocols are open, and that can be used as a vulnerabilities as well in the companies. And the problem is when a company or someone is using outdated or vulnerable softwares, as a hacker it's our job to exploit or hack them. For now, our goal is just to scan these machines or find the open ports on the vulnerable machine. From there we will figure out what software is running on these ports, and eventually that will lead us to find some vulnerabilities in it as well. So I think we are ready to explore scanning part, and we have got a lot of things covered till now. And in this section we are going to use our most important tool, that is Nmap. And for a ethical hacker or a cybersecurity expert, mastering the Nmap is most essential thing.